They told me I was too emotional for my own grandmother's funeral. They lied. The real reason they wanted me gone was a secret I never saw coming. The phone felt like a block of ice against my ear, even though it was a warm spring day. My mother's voice was the thing that chilled me to the bone. "It's for the best, honey," she said, her tone syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she was about to deliver a particularly nasty blow. "You know how emotional you get. We can't have a scene at your grandmother's funeral." I couldn't form words. My throat had closed up, and the world outside my apartment window seemed to mute and blur. A scene. She was worried I'd make a scene. My grandmother, the only person in that entire family who ever looked at me and saw a person instead of a project, was gone, and my mother's primary concern was managing the optics. "Jessica agrees," she continued, twisting the knife. Of course, Jessica agreed. My older sister, the golden child, had spent her entire life agreeing with my mother. She was the successful lawyer with the perfect husband and the 2.5 kids who never colored outside the lines. I was the art school dropout with the tattoos and the inconvenient opinions. I was the scene waiting to happen. "Grandma asked for me," I finally managed to croak out, the words scraping my throat raw. "Before she asked for me." A pause on the other end of the line, a tiny calculated sigh. "She was confused, sweetheart. The medication. You know how it was. It wouldn't be fair to anyone, least of all her memory, for you to come and cause a disturbance." A disturbance. My grief was a disturbance. My love was an inconvenience. I sank down onto my couch, the phone slipping in my sweaty palm. I thought of Grandma's hands, wrinkled and smelling faintly of lavender and yeast from the bread she was always baking. I thought of how she'd trace the ink on my arm, the sprawling vines and flowers, and say, "Well, it's not for me, but it's a part of you, so I love it." She was the only one. My mother was still talking, prattling on about arrangements and how beautiful the casket spray Jessica had picked out was. I wasn't listening. I was staring at a framed photo on my wall. Me and Grandma sitting on her porch swing 5 years ago. I'm laughing, head thrown back, and she's looking at me with this soft, knowing smile. The picture was a silent testament to a bond my mother could never understand and therefore had to destroy. "Fine," I whispered, cutting her off mid-sentence. "I won't come." The relief in her voice was sickening. "Oh, good. I knew you'd understand. It's just easier this way. Easier for her." I hung up before she could say another word. For an hour, I just sat there, hollowed out. Then a slow, cold anger began to fill the void. She would not erase me from this. She would not get the last word on my relationship with my grandmother. I couldn't be there in person, but I would be there in spirit. I picked up my phone, my fingers flying across the screen as I searched for the number of the finest florist in my hometown. An idea, sharp and clear, bloomed in my mind. I placed an order for the biggest, most beautiful arrangement of lavender roses and white lilies they had. Something that would dwarf Jessica's perfect, tasteful casket spray. Something no one could ignore. "And the card?" the pleasant voice of the florist asked. I took a deep breath, the cold anger solidifying into purpose. I knew exactly what I wanted it to say. It wasn't just a message of condolence, it was a message to my mother, and I had a plan to make sure it wasn't just read, but heard by everyone. I didn't just write a simple card. I spent the next 2 hours hunched over my desk, writing a letter on thick, cream-colored stationery. I poured every ounce of my love and grief onto that page. I wrote about sitting on her lap as she read me stories, her voice a low, comforting rumble. I wrote about the time I came home from college with my first tattoo, terrified of the family's reaction, and how she'd simply traced the lines with her finger and told me it was beautiful because it was a part of me. I also wrote about the things she'd told me in confidence. "Some people," I wrote, quoting her exact words from a conversation we'd had last summer, "are so busy keeping up appearances that they forget to just be. They build a house so perfect, they're afraid to live in it. Don't ever be afraid to live, my girl. Make messes. Your heart is not a museum exhibit to be kept behind glass. Every word was a tribute to her, and a carefully aimed arrow at my mother." I sealed the letter in an envelope marked "For Grandma," and then I put my real plan into motion. I called the funeral home directly. I explained in a voice trembling with manufactured fragility that I was the out-of-state granddaughter, heartbroken that a sudden illness prevented me from traveling. "My grandmother and I were incredibly close," I said, letting a tear catch in my voice. "I've sent an arrangement, and there's a letter with it. It was her wish that I say a few words. Would it be too much to ask for the officiant to read it during the eulogies? It would mean the world to me. It's the only way I can be there." The funeral director, a kind-sounding man named Mr. Abernathy, was all sympathy. "Of course," he said, "it would be a lovely personal touch. He'd make sure the officiant received it personally." I hung up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The trap was set. The day of the funeral was agonizing. The silence in my apartment was a physical weight. I pictured the somber church, the hushed whispers, my mother in her perfectly tailored black dress, accepting condolences with a stiff, practiced grief. I imagined Jessica dabbing at her dry eyes with an elegant handkerchief, and I imagined my flowers, a vibrant, untamed explosion of life amidst the muted tones, with my letter nestled inside. I paced my floor for hours, alternating between waves of profound sadness for my grandmother and a sick anxious excitement about the bomb I had just lobbed into the middle of my family's carefully curated performance. My phone remained silent all morning. The service was scheduled for 11 a.m. By noon, I was convinced my plan had failed. Maybe Mr. Abernathy forgot. Maybe my mother saw the letter and intercepted it, burning it before anyone could see. The thought made my stomach clench. Then, at 12:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin, Sarah. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The message consisted of only 5 words.
"What in the hell did you do?"
Before I could even reply, my phone started ringing. It was Sarah. I answered, my throat suddenly dry as dust. I didn't even get to say hello. Sarah's voice, breathless and high-pitched, shot through the speaker. "Chloe, you are not going to believe this. He read it. The pastor read the whole damn thing. Your mom tried to stand up and stop him." "Tried to stop him?" I repeated, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "What do you mean?" "I mean she literally stood up in the front pew." Sarah's voice was a frantic whisper shout. "Right after he read the part about some people build a house so perfect they're afraid to live in it." Aunt Carol stood up and said, "That's not appropriate." Your dad pulled her back down, but Chloe, the damage was done. Everyone heard it. Everyone was looking. The pastor just sort of froze for a second, then cleared his throat and kept reading. He read the whole thing. The part about Grandma loving your tattoos, the part about your heart not being a museum. It was beautiful. And absolutely brutal. I sank back onto my couch, a dizzying mix of triumph and nausea swirling in my gut. I had done it. I had shattered their perfect, sterile performance of grief with the one thing they couldn't control, Grandma's truth, spoken in my words. "And the flowers?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, my God, the flowers!" Sarah laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "They're magnificent. They look like a wild garden exploded on her casket. Jessica's sad little spray of white carnations looks like a garnish next to it. Jessica she's not happy." I saw her crying in the vestibule, real tears this time. For a moment I felt a sharp pang of something that might have been guilt, but it was quickly replaced by a cold wave of satisfaction. Good. Let them feel something real for once, even if it was just fury. Sarah had to go, promising to call later with more details. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I didn't feel like a monster. I felt like a granddaughter who had kept a promise. I had ensured Grandma's true spirit was present at her own farewell, even if I couldn't be. The quiet in my apartment didn't last long. An hour later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Jessica. This wasn't going to be a whispered, gossip-filled call like Sarah's. This was the main event. I took a fortifying breath and answered. "How could you?" she hissed, skipping any form of greeting. Her voice was shaking with rage. "How could you do that to Mom? To all of us? Today of all days?" "I did it for Grandma," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady.
I gave her the eulogy she deserved, not the sanitized, pre-approved version you all would have delivered. You made her funeral a circus, she screamed. You embarrassed Mom in front of her entire church, her friends. You did it to hurt her, not to honor Grandma. You've always been selfish, always had to be the center of attention, and you couldn't even let our grandmother have a peaceful, dignified service.
"Dignified?" I shot back, the anger finally flaring hot in my chest.
You mean silent?
"You mean a service where her actual personality was scrubbed clean so none of the church ladies would clutch their pearls? That's not dignity, Jessica. That's erasure." There was a choked sound on the other end of the line, a mix of a sob and a gasp. When she spoke again, her voice was low and venomous, stripped of all its earlier hysteria. "You have no idea what you've done. You weren't here at the end. You don't know anything. Mom was just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Protect me from what, Jessica? From my own grief? From having an opinion? Don't try to spin this into some noble act. She didn't want me there because I'm an embarrassment to her perfect life." There was a long, shuddering breath on the other end of the line. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was broken, all the fury gone, replaced by a raw exhaustion that stunned me into silence. "No, Chloe. She was trying to protect you from what Grandma said." I frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" "What did Grandma say?" "The last 2 days, she was in and out of lucidity." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. "But about an hour before she passed, she woke up. She was completely clear. Mom was in the room and I was there. She looked right at Mom. And Chloe, she was so angry." My heart started to pound in a slow, heavy rhythm. "She fought for you," Jessica said, and now she was openly weeping. "She told Mom she was a fool for trying to file down your edges your whole life. She said, 'The brightest things have the sharpest corners, and you've been trying to make her dull and safe since the day she was born.' She said she was ashamed of her. Then she said that if we didn't let you be at her funeral, in all your tattooed, messy, glorious humanity, that she would haunt us." Those were her words, Chloe. "I will haunt you." The world tilted on its axis. Every piece of the puzzle rearranged itself in my mind, forming a picture I had never imagined. My mother's fear, the desperate need to control the narrative. "You'll make a scene." She wasn't afraid of the scene I would make.
She was terrified that my very presence would be a testament to the scene Grandma had already made. She didn't want me there as a living, breathing reminder of her own mother's final damning judgment. She wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to protect herself from the truth. She forbade Mom from telling you, Jessica continued, her voice thick. She said you didn't need to be burdened by her fighting your battles at the very end. She wanted you to remember her on the porch swing, not like that. So Mom twisted it. She made it about you, about your emotions, because she couldn't bear for it to be about her and her failures as a mother. I went along with it because it was easier. And I'm so sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry I hung up the phone. The triumph I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by a wave of love so fierce and painful it took my breath away. My letter, my dramatic gesture at the funeral, it was a pale imitation of the real final act. My grandmother had fought for me. She had seen me, truly seen me, right to the very end. My mother hadn't silenced me. She had tried and failed to silence my grandmother. I walked over to the framed photo on my wall, the one of me and Grandma on the porch swing. I looked at her soft, knowing smile, and for the first time I understood its depth. She wasn't just smiling at my laughter, she was smiling with the quiet confidence of someone who knew my heart, who loved every piece of it, and who would defend it to her last breath. My letter hadn't been an attack. It had been an echo of a love that was louder than any of my family's silence. And in the quiet of my apartment, I finally felt at peace. I didn't need to be at her funeral. She had already given me the most perfect goodbye.